Welcome to another edition of Cambridge Inside Out. I'm Robert Winters.
Judy Nathans back. Thank you, Patrick. Great show. I liked it.
Right.
Some other people ruffled their feathers. But...
Right. He's like the Joan Rivers of the Tonight Show. Right.
Well, she got fired. I mean, she wouldn't.
Well, that's true. That's true.
Yeah,
I forgot about that
Johnny
controversy.
resented her getting her own show.
Yeah, I know.
So Patrick,
unthinkable.
Don't get your own show.
Actually, that'd be kind of a cool show, though, wouldn't it?
It would be, but you know what? If you really
Controversial,
want
but
it,
good.
you can be with Robert a lot. I'll let you be
There
here
we
3
go.
times a month.
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
Anyway,
So today's June 25th, 2019.
Yes.
You know, I guess we're now officially, it's our first show officially into summer.
Yes.
And it doesn't really superbly feel like summer yet.
No,
But
there's so much going on.
we're eking our way in,
Yeah.
you know. But anyway, so what's happening around town?
Well, they had their last official kind of meeting before the summer recess, the city
That's right.
council.
So-
However, they do have they had 2 meetings today. One is still going on, I think.
That's right. I think was it a transportation one?
Yes,
and
it
was
wasn't
also
televised.
was there one a housing one today having
Yeah,
to
I
do
watched
with
that.
some?
Yeah, that
I
was
think there's
televised.
some
It was on.
preferences for
It was on the
inclusionary
eligibility.
units.
What's the eligibility for inclusionary housing? And they met with the Affordable Housing Trust
Yeah.
to get some input.
One of the one of the things I think, I mean, not that I was intending to run off on this tangent, but a little brief
Why not?
tangent. The thing is that there's the beautiful thing about inclusionary housing is that there are no federal or state financial strings attached, and what that means is that certain restrictions in terms of low income only, for example, for
You sure about that? I heard the words federal running around, so I don't know.
well, the thing is, to whatever degree you have federal
Okay.
money coming
Right.
in, it often comes with strings attached that say that you can't use it necessarily for middle or upper middle income.
Okay, so you're talking about the inclusionary zoning is mainly in private
No,
development.
that's right. So the thing
Oh,
is
okay.
that inclusionary zoning
Yeah, it's different.
is privately funded, so it
Right.
doesn't have those strings.
That's
So
a
they're
good point. Yeah.
so when the housing division people within the community development department are kind of picking who's going to get
Mm-hmm.
here and there, they have that's the only real way they can actually address currently the middle income gap problem.
Except that it seemed to, I don't know, I got the impression that they still aren't hitting the moderate income people.
They're
It's
not.
still-
You know, I always get middle, moderate. I kind of confuse
I know a
these
lot
two,
now.
quite honestly.
Moderate income is 80% of AMI,
Yeah.
which in Cambridge, the AMI, is close to $78,000 or something. It's in the 70s.
Right.
So 40% would be, that's what they base for like Cambridge Housing Authority. So
Yeah.
what I'm saying is that most of those inclusionary units are going for people, I think, below 50%.
Right. But the thing is that there are people I know who have relatively low income who says, well, I can't even get into an inclusionary because you have to make a certain amount of money to be qualified for
That's
that.
true.
And they make it out as if that's a very unfair thing, and maybe it is. But the thing
Well-
is that the people who are in that income range are
Mm-hmm.
ineligible to get into other kinds of publicly funded or subsidized housing.
Right.
So the thing is this is the one place where the city has some flexibility to accommodate those people in those brackets.
Right, but it is generally you can't have much in assets. It's very
Yes.
different when
Yeah.
the Cambridge development.
Right.
I'm sorry, the community development guidelines versus the housing authority versus private. I mean, I know a lot because I've been looking.
Sure.
Anyway.
Yeah, right.
So yeah, you just have to. But the AMI was a real eye opener to me. That 80% is $56,700. That's not cheap change. I mean,
No,
do teachers
it's
even
not.
make that?
Depends. If
Yeah.
your starting salary may be one thing, but at 1 year in, it might be quite in
Right, because
excess
I know
of
in
it, too.
Boston it's even higher, and they have like home ownership
Right.
things, and you have to, and that's for a single person, by the way.
Mhm.
Family of 4, it's like 107,000 or something.
Right.
So
Yeah,
this is an expensive place to live.
it's an expensive place
Yeah.
to live too. But the thing is, you find yourself in situations now, and which
Right.
actually relates to another matter we're going to
Yeah.
talk about,
Oh right.
having to do
yeah.
with the cannabis regulation and
Oh, that,
permitting,
yeah.
that where city councilors are basically, when they're meeting, they basically say that we think the policy should be this, to give preference to this income range or whatever. They're essentially doing what they can to sort of pick the winners, if you will. Who's
Yeah.
going to actually get access to this or get preference,
And
to
what
it.
do they base that on?
right? I
Because
honestly,
that can't just be on income; it's got to be on past performance. What
it's-
is that based on? Have you seen eligibility requirements for that?
no, it's sort of out of my bailiwick, but
Yeah,
the
but it
thing
must be
is-
on some application or
right.
something.
But
yeah.
the thing is that you're in a situation here where I mean, sort of if we were, maybe outside of the Boston core and normal economics was operational,
Yeah.
people would just sort of sort out. You wouldn't be going to an agency to sort of have things done, and you wouldn't be having to meet criteria. You would just talk to a landlord and say, hey, do you got an apartment for rent, right? It's just when you're sort of in this kind of artificial world where, you're applying to agencies, whatever, then you have to have rules, and we're going to have rules. Somebody has to write the rules.
But even in those other places, I mean, if you have a Section 8, you can go anywhere.
Oh, yeah.
There's
Oh,
mobile
yeah.
Section 8s, and then
Sure.
there's project-based
Sure.
Section 8. So it's,
Sure, but in most of the world, you basically just
Yeah.
look for places to live, right?
Right.
And hopefully you find them, right?
Yeah.
And so you're in a situation now where people are trying to essentially write the rules to say who's going to be advantaged, who's going to be disadvantaged.
You're getting back to the cannabis situation.
Yeah. So the thing is, that sort of relates to what I was going to
Yeah.
talk about here, which was something which I was a little surprised that it brought out probably more people during public comment at the city council meeting last night than anything else.
That's true.
Right. So what had happened, the city council passed a zoning ordinance, a zoning amendment some time ago, having to do with the regulation of cannabis establishments. I think it was primarily medical marijuana, but they can also open up and sort of flip and become recreational down the road as well. And if you're one of these, I think they call them vertically integrated marijuana operations, where
Which means you have the grower, you have all
you
that
grow it,
percent,
you process it, you test
Yeah.
it. They may have to be independently tested, so
Yeah,
let
good
me
point.
take that one
Yeah.
back. But and you also do the retail. So the thing is, now that you can't do that on the cheap, right?
No.
Now those ones are regulated under zoning. I think they can't be any closer than about 1,800 feet, I believe is the rule.
15, something like that. Yeah.
Something in that
Okay.
order, right? Okay, but then there are these exceptions that are actually part of the state law, and not just the state law, but also the regulations that are being written by this Cannabis Control Commission, and the city council is somewhat, I believe, obliged to basically do permitting of these and giving preference to certain parties. So there's these, I think, so-called social equity.
Yeah, what's the difference between social equity and economic empowerment? Is it?
It's.
Do women come under the economic empowerment one?
I think
Minorities and women?
I think there's like a little laundry list of things you
Yeah.
can do to be eligible for one of these categories. And there are certain parties who are applying where they have to basically say, I think I'm going to be a social equity applicant, or I'm going to be an economic empowerment applicant. And you, of course, you'll probably do whatever seems to give you an advantage to get in there. But the thing is that part of the reason why you have these different categories here is that some of those applicants don't have the capital
Right.
to or the desire perhaps to have a whole vertically integrated marijuana growing,
They don't necessarily
distribution,
have to,
retail.
but it's certainly.
It's very
yeah.
costly.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't be able to get in the ground floor if you were, sort of from more modest means. I think there's been kind of an understanding that they didn't want to have nothing but like big interstate,
Well, no,
big
they want
deals.
some local, maybe someone that's local that could
Right,
that do this, which that makes sense to me.
right. But there are out-of-state parties who are actually
Yeah.
buying up some of
Yeah.
these, these operations here and
Yeah.
wanting to control what could be potentially
Yeah.
a very lucrative business. So, with all the best intentions, I think the state regulators are trying to sort of, quote, level the playing field. But
Even though federally, it's still against the law.
actually,
marijuana,
there
right?
is, I think the House actually did pass something that's going to try and ease that.
Protect.
But I doubt whether the Senate will go along, and who
Yeah.
knows what the other guy's going to
Yeah.
do, right?
All right,
But,
so what happened with these?
All right, so what happened
Yeah.
was, they've been sort of batting around. I haven't followed it as closely as perhaps I could have, but they've been batting around possible modifications, having to do with how even things as seemingly crazy strange as like how much shelf space should be allocated to certain products.
Oh yeah, that's right. The real nitty gritty.
Well, I would call it micromanagement.
Yeah.
I mean, there is something kind of disquieting to me to have city councilors debating how specifically people should be operating
But are they?
within
But aren't
their
they looking at some
establishments.
other template from some other communities? They didn't just come up with
No,
that.
I think that's true, but the thing
Yeah.
is that, but they're still in the business of basically trying
yeah,
to sort of
it's
write
crazy.
the rules so
Yeah.
microscopically
That it's, yeah.
to give you, and also to give advantages to one over the other. I think that's actually what the controversy
Yeah.
last night was, is that,
Right.
whether it's all for sort of philosophical reasons or because maybe people know some of the applicants, which is true,
Yeah.
they
And
seem,
they're local versus,
it certainly seemed,
yeah.
so I don't want to make this as
Right.
an accusation, but it certainly seemed as though some amendments that came from Councilors Siddiqui and Zondervan
Was Siddiqui's name on that? I didn't
Yeah,
see her.
it was the
okay.
two.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
were being specifically
Yeah.
written to give advantage
To
to
the
certain
economic,
economic
right.
empowerment ones. Now,
Right.
now you might say, well, that sounds great, because if you're going to hire local people or people who are from, less
Yeah.
economic means, and that sounds good. I find that very appealing.
Yeah.
But the thing is that they think they put in a clause, whether it was intentional or I don't know, but basically where it said that for like 2 years.
That 2-year
would-
moratorium on the other applicants
Yeah.
to open. In other words, it's giving a head start
Right.
to these other.
Now,
yeah,
what happened?
that-
So, and again, I may be reading this somewhat wrong, but
Yeah.
if you're one of the medical marijuana dispensaries, and I think everybody knows that at least to some degree, that's and again, I'm not criticizing medical marijuana uses, but the way they kind of pushed hard to get established here, to establish a beachhead, was they wanted to get sort of
to
in
also be able
early,
to
and
recreational.
none of them have made any secret at all of
Right,
the fact
which
that
makes sense.
they eventually
Yeah.
would like to also.
And to me,
be in
if you're
the
going to have these, which
recreational.
I didn't want at all, I mean, medical marijuana is one thing. Have them together. At least it's more controlled. I don't
Right.
want all these spotty things out
Well,
there, but-
it's when I went with the Central Square Advisory Committee, some of the question and answer about this sort of revealed that at least one of the applicants for a recreational marijuana place, their supplier was the same as the one who's down the street running the medical marijuana dispensary.
Well, that actually is
or
good. If
will
they
be,
have,
yeah.
Okay, but that to me makes sense.
Yeah,
Use
no,
the
it's true.
sources, and they make money. They would.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Oh, yeah. Right.
That's okay.
So, but now you're sort of, I mean, the phrase I tend to use for this is now the city council is thrusting himself into this position of basically trying to pick winners. So to say, well, we're going to write the regulations this way so that, this party here has an advantage.
So if they're already working with this other bigger player, why do you need the moratorium then?
It's a good question.
Because to me, that's the part that most people are objecting to.
Right. I kind of wonder myself about
Yeah.
that. And is this
If they
because
could
you
tweak that,
literally.
and maybe 6 months.
Right.
Right. Because
That's
it
right.
seems like, and especially when they said, well, we have 3 economic whatever that are ready to go, and they're
Right.
paying rent, blah blah blah. Okay, then let's just reduce that time.
Right, but if you actually have a very real situation here, because in
Yeah.
Central Square,
Yeah.
Revolutionary Clinics they're outfitting the building now, the old
With the old
Blockbuster building,
Blockbuster, that's right.
right now as we speak.
So they're already paying
Yeah.
probably to have that use.
Right, and they have already
Yeah.
filed for recreational use, so that when
Right.
they open, it'll be purely
Right.
medical marijuana
so
dispensary.
to say to them, well, I'm sorry, you're gonna have to wait 2 years. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, you can only do the medical marijuana
Yeah.
while we're going to try and give an advantage to
So-
the economic empowerment
Right,
applicant who
yeah.
wants to open up in the old
right next door.
in Central
Yeah.
Kitchen building, versus the social equity applicant who wants to
Yeah.
open up in the Harvest Co-op space.
And
Right.
that's what we need. 3 places
Three
right
within
in Central Square.
three within
And-
spitting distance. I mean,
Folks, I don't know if you realize, but we can have up to 8 or 9 because it's based on the liquor licenses in the city, and
Yeah.
we have 39 of those or something. So it
Right.
is insane.
Yeah.
Plus, those economic people can be within the buffer zone.
Right.
They can be close. So do we really
Right.
need that?
What makes it sort of more,
crazy.
sort of almost a little comical,
Ah.
is when the economic empowerment applicant comes there, they have a former elected official representing them, and then when the
Medical marijuana.
medical marijuana applicant, they have people who are very politically connected. So it's
There was somebody, I think, that was in the first commenter, I think was part of the group.
right.
And then the rest of the people are people that use medical marijuana.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, what typically happens here, because I remember this when they were actually first going through the medical marijuana controversy, is that the people with a financial interest here, they're no fools. They know how to bust into people. So they
Did
they
their
have
job.
they bring in people in from all over the state saying, oh, you got to do
Well,
this
they
and
weren't
you
all
got
over
to
the
do that.
state. They were from like,
No,
Norwood or somewhere.
right.
Yeah.
But the thing is they're
Mobile.
they're not
They
just.
know how to do it.
It wasn't like they were just looking up on the city website, found
No.
out that this issue was happening, and they
They're
randomly showed up.
they're following this more
totally
than people in the city
organized.
should follow
Yeah.
what goes on.
Thoroughly
here.
organized.
Yeah.
There is a sort of a side issue too, which
Yeah.
has to do with the fact that, what I think maybe not everybody understands is that when these recreational marijuana places open, they're not going to basically be selling nickel bags over the counter.
No.
They're selling the high-end stuff, usually at a
not
pretty
cheap.
good premium.
Yep.
And the thing is that if there's a discount off of that or the ones that's more appropriate for medical marijuana people, they might end up being more costly than what they can get from the registered marijuana dispensaries, and so they don't want to have the medical marijuana dispensaries be disadvantaged
Yeah.
because it actually is
Right.
financially better for them.
But who says they can give a discount? Wasn't that contested as maybe a legal issue that they can?
Well,
Yeah.
this is
There's
another
so many
thing
legal
about.
issues around this.
This is the funny thing about when you leave. There's a reason why some people, and again, I'm not saying this has to be so, but there's a reason why some people sort of say that, well, maybe government should just sort of basically set the basic rules and let the businesses sort it out.
Yeah, well-
you charge too much, well, you people go to the other guy.
But then that's where capitalism is going.
I
off the
know, I
cliff,
know.
Because then we
Right.
have no control. So we're going too much.
Well, but then again,
Yeah.
this is, but we've been in a kind of an era of deregulation where
true.
taxi cab medallions have been disappearing in
Right,
favor of
everybody,
Ubers and
right.
Lyfts, right?
And liquor
So
licenses.
yeah,
everything.
so there's something just kind of disquieting to
Yeah.
me about when you have elected officials spending inordinate amounts of time
I
trying
know.
to basically micro-write the ordinances in order
Yeah.
to steer this
Yeah.
business or this housing or this to this particular people, almost not quite to the level of this individual, but there comes a point where it starts to become a little absurd. And I think
Yeah.
that's kind of what I was feeling at this meeting last night regarding the
Okay,
cannabis.
so
Maybe they ought to take a giant step back
my
and just
question is,
do a simple regulation.
all right, even though we're allowed 8 or 9, do we have to permit 8 or 9?
I think that you can't.
I guess you.
I think you can't deny them. I mean, the thing
Hmm.
is, honestly, I have to look at that one here because that was one part
Yeah.
when this went to a ballot initiative. I never bothered to read that deeply. So
I
that came
voted no.
later
I
for me.
just,
Yeah.
and also in a lot of cities where the black market is still strong because it's cheaper.
Well, that's actually one of the concerns I
Yeah.
think even law enforcement people will
Yeah,
feel is that
right.
if you open up medical
Right.
or never mind medical, but
Yeah.
recreational marijuana
Right.
places where they're charging a top dollar, then and they have to pay taxes on top of this, whatever.
Right, they're paying a lot for their place.
So
and all that,
what's to stop some fellow from basically
Oh,
setting up
taking that and then
setting up
selling
shop out the back of his van in the parking lot on the next block,
Well,
and
I
then
think
the word
that's ridiculous.
well.
Because somebody could see that. I think it would be done through the mail or something. I don't know.
Well, or else if people are lining up, you say, "Hey, you're going in there. You're going to pay $100 for this. Tell you what,
Well,
come with me. I'll give you for
Isn't
your
this
80."
drug dealing already going on some places in Central Square and places?
Yeah, that's right. That's
Yeah,
right.
it's just-
But what will be different is that you'll have clientele
That are-
piling in with pockets full of cash.
True. They're going to be a higher clientele. Probably.
Yes, right.
Yes.
But the thing is, to whatever degree people feel they can only do is cash sales. I think there may be some exception with debit cards, but
Oh, right.
yeah.
The banks haven't gotten on board
right
yet because of the whole federal
because
thing.
of the federal conflict.
Oh my
so if you
gosh.
now have a situation where
You
you
have
figure
people robbed.
you have somebody who looks like he might be a real easy mark. He's got all the,
Oh, gosh.
he looks like the guy on the rolling papers package. You say, oh, this guy's got a pocket full of
I
cash.
feel bad for the police.
Yeah.
Not only do they have to deal with
Yeah.
public smoking and all that, they're going to have to deal with maybe crime around these places. Although I think some of the bigger entities
Yeah.
are hiring their own security, and you have
Right.
to, but
I mean,
still.
I think it's a fair argument to say that those sales are happening now.
Yeah.
And maybe they're problematic now, maybe they aren't. So you're just shifting it around, honestly.
I'm
we'll see how
sorry, I'm not for this world. I
Let's-
don't know. It's just too
Right.
much for me.
Yeah.
I
yeah.
it's just.
Now, there are other things we can certainly say about that council meeting last night.
Yes, what
But
was the
I'll
other-
say one very quick thing had to
Okay.
do with. sort of on the topic of micro writing and micromanagement.
Yeah.
Okay,
Oh,
briefly.
curb cut.
Right. So
Yes.
so
Here we go.
so at MIT, is a developer with Matimco and the Volpe site, right? So
In East Cambridge.
so they applied to get a curb cut as part of where the federal building is
Is it
going
on
to go.
Broadway?
I think it's on
55 Broadway, I think.
55 Broadway.
Yeah.
So
There's an
anyway,
existing driveway, they want to enlarge it. Isn't that what it is?
the thing is
Or-
that part of the argument is
Yeah.
that if you're going to put the building here, how do you maximize access to
Right.
the open space or whatever?
Right.
So they come to some decisions, and it requires removal of 2 trees, one of which is sickly dying,
Right,
and the other one is probably healthy, right?
yeah.
So
And they're going to plant 8 more.
and planning more, but Councilor Zondervan goes on
Yeah.
and on and on,
I know.
like, as if like
Yeah.
the fact
It's
that
the worst in
one
the
tree
world. Yeah,
going
and
away
what's-
is going to just
Yeah.
somehow this is
But
an
also
unthinkable
Jan
thing.
Devereaux brought up something about the intersection and how you cause it. But they've
But
looked
this
at
is,
all that.
but isn't
I
this
think.
why you have city staff, is to
I
analyze
know.
safety of
It was
intersections?
Sarah Gallup, by the way, that presented that
With
did public-
MIT?
Yeah,
Yeah.
she was there. So that
Yeah,
was,
yeah. So it just,
Oh, here we go.
when
I know.
when you got elected
know.
officials deciding that I'm now a traffic engineer,
yeah.
and I'm going to go on at length about that.
It
The
was
same
mainly about the trees.
same counselor, when the people from the information technology say we'd like to do things a certain way, says, "Well, I went to MIT, I can do math.
Oh,
Let me
he
tell
brought
you how
that.
you ought to be doing your
Yeah.
database management." I said, "Well,
Oh, that's right.
maybe-
That came up too.
my
Yeah.
feeling about that is that even if you're an elected official and you have specific knowledge in a field, don't use your position at the microphone during the middle of the city council to try and display your expertise. Go talk to them and say, "Hey, buddy, come here. Let me talk to you. I got an idea.
Yeah.
Why don't you think about it this way, okay?" Right? And then just
Be a
do
little
that.
more
As an
subtle
as
about
a
it,
as
yeah.
a citizen. Don't use your pulpit to do
But
that.
I think that's, especially because as we're approaching the elections,
Oh,
it's going to be
you
even
think?
more. And also, this was the last meeting before July 29th
that's
meeting.
right.
Get it all in, all those
Right,
policy
yeah.
orders. It's just
Briefly,
it's a little annoying.
we should
It
talk more
really
about
is.
elections, but I'll just say
Right, we
quickly
will.
right
We
now,
can do that,
July
yeah.
1st, next Monday,
That's
is the
right.
first day you can pick up nomination
And that'll be
papers.
interesting to see. Although they have actually all month to pick them up. They just have
That's
to
right.
return them
So
with the
pick them up,
signatures.
best to pick them up early,
and you
and
return them by July 31st.
right, because whoever turns in an individual signature first gets credit for it, and if you turn in
Oh,
the
that's
same
true, with
person's
the same
signature,
signature, right.
it doesn't count. So
They should
anyway.
ask if you've signed other people's
Yeah.
nomination papers, right? Isn't that the
Uh,
easiest way to do
you
it?
really should.
Yeah.
You should first ask, "Are you a registered voter?"
Oh,
and
that's a
then
good
say,
point,
"Have
too.
you
In
signed anybody
Cambridge,
else's
that's right,
papers?"
'cause
That's
those are
true.
two important things.
That's
yeah.
right. I'll just say something briefly. One thing
Yeah.
that happened, not related to the city council meeting, but certainly related to the politics.
Uh-huh.
Last week, I forget, was it Wednesday? I'm not sure now. There was a
Oh, the
scheduled meeting
courthouse.
on the
Yeah.
parking. Basically,
Like
there was
McCall.
the city commissioned a study basically of not only the capacity for parking in a First Street garage, which was the garage that used to be affiliated with the Sullivan
Was it
Courthouse,
432 spaces there?
420, I
Or
think.
something like that. Okay.
So the thing is that the chosen developers of the courthouse are looking for a leasehold arrangement,
And how many
uh,
spaces do they want?
400 and something.
So they want the whole
No,
garage?
no. The garage has many more than that.
Oh, it does.
So a study
Oh, I
was
thought it
done,
was-
and,
okay.
and remember, the garage used to be the garage that served the courthouse, so it's
Okay.
important to understand that context.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, there was a public meeting. The study came back. It studied not just the garage, but the whole area.
Right.
Right.
'Cause there's other garages.
And it came back, and then it was the well thought of conclusion of the people in traffic and parking that in fact there's sufficient capacity that this is not going to be a problem.
So our city's department said that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was actually the meeting. Sort of started off with a presentation that
Okay.
made clear that that it is our expert opinion that this is the case.
And this meeting was just about the parking issues.
It's the parking, but the thing is that the parking is kind of the lever here on the ability of the courthouse
Right.
redevelopment by
Oh, I
Leggett
understand.
McCall to
Yeah.
proceed. So there were bunches of people came out there basically trying to use the opportunity because they
To
still
talk
would
about
like to.
all their issues with affordable housing and all that.
That's kind of a red herring here,
Really?
quite honestly. The real issue has to do with the fact it's the same people who simply didn't want the courthouse building
To begin
redeveloped this way.
Right.
And this is simply just the latest
Well, that's what I
chapter
mean.
in the
Yeah,
process.
right.
What complicated was when Representative Connolly put out a
He was
word
there?
all over. Yes, he was there. so he's got all his folks there packed in there. The people from Legg and McCall, certainly, they got a lot of their people there too. So everybody is trying to pack the meeting with partisans. But the thing is that there was a pretty loud, clear suggestion from Representative Connolly that in fact the city commissioned this study specifically to justify the position that they already had taken. In other words, they're basically saying that the city was not upfront and honest in the study. Well, this has caused some pretty severe irritation for people because you're basically saying that the city manager and this traffic park are all somehow corrupt, and they've decided that they're just sort of doing it for the developer, you know.
Right.
You know, so that's one of the factors of this meeting. It was quite interesting. It was a pretty evenly split crowd, quite honestly. But
that's good.
But the thing is, it's almost meaningless to sort of count heads at these meetings because basically it's just a test of who is able to organize a biased group better than the other. You know.
Right, but weren't there a lot of people that live in that area that
there
are in
were.
support of this? Just please, let's get this developed.
There were a lot of people who live right nearby, including former heads of at least one former head of the East Cambridge planning team who said, come on, I really want this project
And
to go
also,
forward.
I mean, do people realize there's all this asbestos and stuff that has to be dealt with, and that they're willing to do that?
Yeah, but you know, the thing is that not just the courthouse, but I would say primarily the courthouse has actually caused there to be some political organizing that actually caused a takeover of the leadership of the East Cambridge planning team. So now the people who are the heads of the East Cambridge planning team are in the audience hissing and booing and acting like children whenever somebody spoke in favor of the project.
Oh dear.
Yeah. Oh no, it was pretty bad. Oh yeah. And then, but meanwhile, there are some people who were historically very much affiliated with the East Cambridge planning team who were speaking in support of it.
Good. I'm glad
You
to hear
know,
that.
so I would say anybody who tries to draw a conclusion from this particular meeting is being foolish.
Yeah. I mean.
But anyway, it's interesting, and yes, will it be a political topic as we head in toward the November election? In East Cambridge, guaranteed.
There's no money for that to be affordable housing. And
No,
affordable housing development wouldn't
silly.
even touch it with all the issues around the asbestos.
That's really true.
Okay, we
Anyway,
gotta go.
we'll be back
Let's
in a
be back
couple
in a few
minutes
minutes.
on Cambridge Inside Out.
Bye.